Hello and welcome to class number 8 in Mosaic Wellness University. This is Dr. Dave, your host and wellness coach. And the title of this class is Metabolic Detoxification and Purification. I know that sounds like a lot of big words, but this is what we mean. We are going to discuss where toxins come from, how our bodies remove them, how we have become overloaded with toxins as a general rule throughout the population, what are the symptoms of toxic overload, how toxins produce disease, what types of solutions to reducing the toxic burden there are. We're going to introduce you to the idea of detoxification or purification. There will be a second presentation that will clarify the actual program of what we will do with the detoxification and purification tools that we will be suggesting, and then we'll talk about the benefits. Okay, so toxic burden. Guys, before World War II, there were very few toxic chemicals that entered our environment other than pollution from fuel sources. Today, there are over 80,000 synthetic chemicals registered in the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and over 1,000 new chemicals are being introduced every year. 1,000 a year. Scientists estimate that everyone alive today carries within her or his body at least 700 chemical toxins, most of which have not been well studied. This is true whether we live in a rural or isolated area, in the middle of a large city, or near an industrialized area. Because many chemicals have the ability to attach to dust particles and or catch air and water currents and travel far from where they are produced or used, the globe, our entire earth, is bathed in a chemical soup. Our bodies have no alternative but to absorb these chemicals and sometimes store them for long periods of time. Now we call this toxic burden or chemical body burden. Rachel Carlson's book Silent Spring, which was published in 1962, exposed the hazards of the pesticide DDT, eloquently questioned humanity's faith in technological progress, and helped set the stage for the environmental movement. The book meticulously described how DDT entered the food chain and accumulated in the fatty tissues of animals, including human beings, and caused cancer and genetic damage. A single application on a crop, she wrote, killed insects for weeks and months, and not only targeted insects, but countless more, and remained toxic in the environment even after it was diluted by rainwater. Carson concluded that DDT and other pesticides had irrevocably harmed birds and animals and had contaminated the entire world food supply. It was an early warning of what was unfolding. Most of us are now aware that these toxic chemicals have had a profound effect on both our external and internal environment. We've now seen the damage to frogs from pesticides that run into the streams, ponds, and lakes, and how they produce mutant frogs with too many legs, too many limbs, and change them from male to female because of the effects of estrogen. And this is also causing hormone problems in humans. We've seen how fish are mutated, sterilized, or killed off when exposed to runoff of industrial chemicals into rivers and bays. We've seen how putting toxic chemicals in people can damage them, such as thalidomide. Thalidomide was used in the early 1960s to treat morning sickness in pregnant mothers, but the results were sickening. A drug prescribed as safe and effective caused birth defects in thousands of children. And what is the explanation? There are things happening with human health today that cannot be explained genetically or due to genetic drift. Here are some of them. There's been an 84% increase in acute lymphocytic leukemia in children from 1975 to 2002. A 57% increase in brain cancer during the same period. A doubling of hypospadias, a birth defect in the urethra of males in infant males in the same period. Sperm counts in men are dropping at a rate of 1% per year. 7.3 Americans are infertile today, up 20% in the last 10 years alone, per thousand. 57% increase in childhood cancers from the period 75 to 2002. 1 in 3 women will get breast cancer. 1 in 2 men will develop cancer in their lifetime. Autism and ADHD are still increasing at extremely high rates. And in 1994, autism affected 3 in every 10,000 children born in the U.S., while today it affects 1 in every 150. Currently, an estimated 7 to 10% of school-aged children in the United States are taking psychiatric medications like Ritalin to treat the symptoms of ADD and ADHD. Okay, so there will be a video as well associated with this particular month, and the 10 Americans study in 2005. This is the time when you're going to want to exit this program if you can, or remember the information here, because this video is what you will want to see, and it's associated with this slide. And this 10 American study of 2005 was the most comprehensive testing ever conducted on human umbilical cord blood. And what was found was that there were 287 industrial chemicals in the samples, nearly half of which are known carcinogens. Also detected were dozens of widely used brominated flame retardants and other toxic byproducts, and numerous pesticides, including DDT and others, which were banned more than 30 years ago. So we're talking about umbilical cord blood, which was thought to be protective. We were thought that the placental barrier was actually protective to the developing infant, the developing fetus. And that was what I was taught when I went through school, that both the blood-brain barrier and the placental blood barrier were both barriers that protected both the brain and the fetus from toxicities. It was a filter, we were told. Obviously, that's not true for either of these different areas. We now know that the blood-brain barrier does not filter toxins and harmful products away from the brain as it doesn't do with the placental barrier. So it does not filter out toxins to a degree. So a baby in utero basically lives in a critical window of vulnerability with an immature blood-brain barrier that efficiently transfers nutrients as well as contaminants to his or her internal organs. In a British study just reported this month, or actually in August 2011, scientists found pesticides created from GMO foods in the umbilical cords of 80% of unborn children tested. So what are we doing to ourselves? Okay, so we want to talk about the symptoms of toxic overload. These are probably found in most everyone that is alive today. But with our toxic burden starting before we were born, it's no wonder that by the time we are adults, many of us suffer from the symptoms of toxic chemical overload. We're talking about morning sinus congestion, adult onset allergies, fatigue, weight gain and the inability to lose weight, foggy thinking, hormone problems, low sex drive, skin rashes that come and go, constipation, poor digestion, joint pain and taking pain relievers, headaches, and difficult sleeping. So why so many toxins? Well, guys, they're coming from all different places. We are being bombarded from toxicity from multiple different sources. Air pollution, water pollution, ingested toxins from foods and drinks, cleaning products in the house. We talked about that in an earlier presentation. Beauty aids and cosmetics, pesticides, building materials, carpeting and fabrics, clothes that we're wearing, dry cleaning, alcohol and cigarettes being exposed to secondhand smoke, drugs and vaccinations, internal toxins from normal metabolism. All of these things are sources of toxicity that can affect our body's overall internal ability to handle it. If we talk about air pollution, the World Health Organization estimates that 4.6 million people die each year from causes directly attributable to air pollution. The American Lung Association has issued its annual report on air pollution in the United States and has declared that 60% of Americans live in areas that contain highly polluted air that can be endangering our lives. Well, guys, that's probably more, there's really no difference between the society in the U.S. in terms of how they're producing toxicity and we are. So really, let's think of that as North Americans, okay? And in water pollution, 40% of North American rivers are too polluted for fishing, swimming, or aquatic life. And in the U.S., the Mississippi River, which drains nearly 40% of the continental U.S., including its central farmlands, carries an estimated 1.5 trillion metric tons of nitrogen pollution from agriculture into the Gulf of Mexico each year. The resulting hypoxic coastal dead zone in the Gulf each summer is about the size of Massachusetts. Guys, there's sex hormones, antibiotics, anticonvulsants, mood stabilizers were all found in water supplies of 24 major metropolitan cities, affecting over 40 million people in a 2008 study. Guys, dangerous chemicals like chlorine and fluoride are also added to city water supplies, which is why we strongly recommend the Kangen water system, which is not only a filter, but it also alkalizes, it antioxidizes, and it microclusters the water to help it get into your body to flush out the chemicals and the pesticides that are in the cells. And we use technology in the office that's part of this program, which is in the second slide presentation associated with this particular month's module, that will go through how we actually monitor your body to make sure that everything is working well from an inside-out perspective. And then we've got ingested toxins. So ingested toxins include things like food additives, colorings, flavorings, emulsifiers, stabilizers, flavor enhancers. We have white sugar and white flour, dairy and meat, non-organic produce and pesticides, artificial sweeteners, altered fats and trans fats, tap waters and sodas. All of these things are part of our daily routine of things that we're exposed to. And then we're feeding our infants toxins. Your child is probably never more vulnerable in the first few months of life when their fragile body is still rapidly developing. Infants experience greater exposure to chemicals per pound than adults and have an immune and porous blood-brain barrier, which allows greater chemical exposures to reach their developing brain. And that's the real key, because everything is developing in the infant. And we all know that if we're wanting to grow good vegetables, we're going to need to have good soil and good water and good sunlight and good nutrition for the soil. The soil has to be found to be able to handle the needs for growing for the plants, to be able to draw out the nutrition from the plants. We need all of the right environment for that. Children also have lower levels of some chemical binding proteins, which allows more of the chemical to reach their organs. So what we're saying is that the newborn infant doesn't have the defenses, and it doesn't have the mechanisms, the pathways, even though they might not be the best as an adult, they don't have them even manifested to that level at all. Infant formulas have been found to contain perchlorates, which disrupt hormone production, especially the thyroid, melamine, that's associated with kidney failure, and fructose corn syrup, and some have even more than a can of soda. So let's look at some of the issues around household cleaners and understand what we're exposed to there. So everyday chemicals found in your household products include ammonia and chlorine, but here are some of the facts about other common chemical ingredients in cleaning products. Diethylene glycol, found in window cleansers, suppresses the nervous system. Formaldehyde, found in spray and wick deodorizers, is a respiratory irritant and suspected carcinogen. Petroleum solvents in floor cleaners damage mucous membranes. Perchloroethylene, a spot remover, causes liver and kidney damage. Butyl cellusolve, common in all-purpose window and other types of cleansers, damages bone marrow, the nervous system, kidneys, and the liver. Guys, we're exposed to this in a pandemic type of reality, coming from us from all different sources. Well, what about personal care products and cosmetics? A study in the U.S. found that the average woman applies 515 chemicals to her face a day. That's makeup, perfumes, lotion, mascara, and other beauty products all contribute to the toxic brew that's causing health problems for many women. The study revealed that the typical woman uses about 13 different beauty products a day. Most of these products contain at least 20 ingredients and additives, many of which can have a detrimental effect on the body and skin. Perfumes alone were found to contain up to 400 different ingredients. Now, more recently, the Environmental Working Group found that the average person uses up to 25 personal care products a day. Now, the Environmental Working Group is an important think tank, nonprofit organization that you need to be aware of. And I have known of this group for probably the last 15 or 16 years. They were the first ones to identify in human beings the actual load, the toxic body burden that is found. They did it also in the infants. That 10-infant study was actually done by the Environmental Working Group, and their website, if it hasn't changed, is www.bodyburden.com, and I can have that information also found and listed within this module, within this class series of notes for this month. But they found that among these, about 200 different chemicals will have been added to scent, preserve, synthesize, and stabilize them for consumption. Many of these ingredients will end up causing hormone disruption, immune disruption, and cancer. There were hormone distributors like DEA, MEA, TEA, phthalates, SLS, SLES, triclosan, carcinogens such as FD and C colors, fragrance ingredients, formaldehyde, parabens, retinol palmitate, and VOCs. These are all things that you might find on the bottles or the containers of the various different beauty products, and you can see what these might be doing to you. Pesticides, another topic to understand. Pesticides are bad boys for many different reasons, guys. Acute exposure can kill you, but chronic exposure to pesticide can lead to neurological damage, including Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. Chronic exposure to pesticides increases the chance of developing endocrine and reproductive disorders. Guys, pesticide sprays can drift through the air, being carried thousands of miles from where it was originally sprayed. They contaminate our waterways and can be found in drinking water, and it can get down into the water table. Pesticides break down slowly in the body and are stored and concentrated in fat cells of the body. And in 1939, there were only 39 pesticides in use in the United States. 50 years later, there were over 22,000 pesticides on the market. Realize, guys, that this is a marketplace. This is a way that companies patent various different chemicals that they have. And so, just like everything else in terms of drugs, vaccines, tobacco, pesticides, beauty products, all of these things are industries, and these industries require a continued output of information, i.e. products, and as these products continue to be released to make money for this industry, the number increases in the marketplace. Okay, so have I scared you yet? Are you concerned about this? Well, you should be. I'm trying to paint a picture of reality. Now we'll get into the household materials. So what do we have within our homes? Because it's said that our home is the most toxic environment for air. It's 100 times more polluted than the actual outside air. So guys, the most common types of this indoor pollution come from household cleaning products, VOCs from furniture and carpeting, so there's off-gassing from carpeting and furniture, formaldehyde and PCBs from wire coatings, adhesives, sealants, and wood finishes, phthalates from plastics, even PVC pipe, flame retardants in electronics, mattresses, curtains, and upholstery, perfluorinated acids found in anything that is Teflon coated or stain resistant, including your clothing, formaldehyde and pressed wood products. All of these things are available for inhalation within a home environment that is becoming more and more airtight and less ventilated. Now we'll talk about willful destruction, the smoking and tobacco issues, because not everybody smokes, but it's a willful decision to willfully ingest through the lung these various different chemicals and problems. The other situations are things that to some degree we really have very little control of. We can do our best at managing what we put on our skin, what we use in our homes, but it's really difficult to do things, really to control what we use, because they're so common and they're so comprehensive throughout our environment. But smoking is something that we willfully choose. And guys, there are over 4,000 chemical compounds that are created by burning a cigarette, many of which are toxic and or carcinogenic. Carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, hydrogen cyanide, and ammonia are all present in cigarette smoke. 43 known carcinogens are in cigarette smoke. It's chilling to think that about not only how smokers poison themselves, but what others are exposed to by breathing in the secondhand smoke. So here is a list of 11 of the most toxic chemicals found in cigarettes. Okay, acetone. All right, acetone is a flammable, colorless liquid used as a solvent. It is one of the active ingredients in nail polish remover. The tobacco industry refuses to say how much acetone gets into cigarettes. Then you've got ammonia, a colorless, pungent gas. The tobacco industry says that it adds flavor, but scientists have discovered that ammonia helps you absorb more nicotine, keeping you hooked on smoking. Arsenic a silvery white, very poisonous chemical element. This deadly poison is used to make insecticides and is also used to kill gophers and rats. Benzene, a flammable liquid obtained from coal tar and used as a solvent. This cancer-causing chemical is used to make everything from pesticides to detergent to gasoline. Benzoapronine, a yellow crystalline carcinogenic hydrocarbon found in coal tar and cigarette smoke. It's one of the most potent cancer-causing chemicals in the world. Butane, a hydrocarbon used as a fuel. It's highly flammable. Butane is one of the key ingredients in gasoline. Cadmium, a metallic chemical element used in alloys. This toxic metal causes damage to the liver, kidneys, and the brain and stays in our bodies for years. And we have ways in the office to get rid of these types of things through various different tools that we have. Formaldehyde, a colorless pungent gas used in solution as a disinfectant and preservative. It causes cancer, damages your lungs, skin, and digestive system. Embalmers use it to preserve dead bodies. Lead, a heavy bluish-gray metallic chemical element. This toxic heavy metal causes lead poisoning, will stunt your growth, and damage your brain. It can easily kill you. Propylene glycol, a sweet, hygroscopic, viscous liquid used as antifreeze and as a solvent and brake fluid. The tobacco industry claims that they add it to keep cheap, reconstituted tobacco from drying out, but scientists say it aids in the delivery of nicotine, tobacco's active drug, to the brain, again helping to keep you hooked. Turpentine, a colorless volatile oil. Turpentine is very toxic and is commonly used as a paint thinner. Guys, this is definitely a rocket of cancer-causing dynamics that we willfully expose ourselves to. It is absolutely ludicrous. What type of self-love would a person have to be involved in this? And I get that it's tough to quit, but anything worth doing is going to be tough anyway. So it's important to really look at this and get tobacco smoke away from your environment, either willfully or by secondhand causes. Okay, now we're going to talk about a fairly controversial topic, but I'm going to at least mention what the common toxins that are found in vaccines. What you choose to do is up to you, but aluminum now replaced mercury in most vaccines except flu vaccines directly linked to Alzheimer's. Ammonium sulfate, which is an inorganic chemical compound used as a fertilizer and protein buffer, is known to cause kidney and liver damage and gastrointestinal dysfunctions. Amphotericin B, an antifungal disinfectant, damages the urinary tract, bowel, and heart functions. Recycled animal tissue of multiple types. This is how mad cow disease started, by introducing recycled animal tissue in cows, but it's being recycled through the vaccines. Formaldehyde, used as a preservative and disinfectant, known to cause cancer, chronic bronchitis, eye irritation when exposed to the body's immune system. MSG, now known to cause cancer in humans. Phenol, a highly toxic disinfectant dye attributed to liver, kidney, heart, and respiratory damage. Phenoxyethanol, an antifreeze, proven to have extreme neurotoxic side effects, and thimerosal, or mercury, a neurotoxin linked to psychological, neurological, and immunological problems, and is still used in flu vaccines. So guys, these are the things that are included in things that we have had exposure to. So if you've come from an era when this was easily provided to the children and there wasn't a lot of knowledge known about it, which includes me, then you will have stockpiled these chemicals into the body. And if you have challenges within your body whereby your own personal, unique, biochemical, genetic capacity to remove these is less than what it should or could be, then you will have accumulated more. I am reminded of a story of a husband and wife who were building a deck using pressure-treated wood that contains formaldehyde. A 12-foot 2x4 has enough formaldehyde. Arsenic, has enough arsenic to kill 250 people in one 12-foot 2x4 length. They were building a deck using, it was out in the summer, it was in a hot climate, they did not have any protective materials like gloves or masks, and they were burning the wood that they were discarding, and the wife got sick. It was determined that she had arsenic poisoning, and the FBI got involved because of that, and they felt that maybe the husband was doing it, so they
we're going to charge him with attempted murder. But the wife said, well, why don't you test him? And found actually a greater concentration of arsenic in his body than she had. However, her ability to handle whatever she was stockpiling was less than what her husband was able to, so it didn't show up yet. So there's this consciousness then that what is one man's poison is another man's pleasure. It affects us differently. Some of us are the canary in the mine when it comes to dealing with toxicity. And the reality is that we don't know that things have actually accumulated to a level that's dangerous until it actually becomes a problem. And now the diagnosis is made of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or other types of neurological challenges. I'm also reminded of another situation, a high-profile case where a gentleman in Atlanta, which is hot and humid, was cutting his grass that had just been treated with a pesticide. And it had aerosoled through the cutting of the grass. He went into neurological shock. It was found that Tagamet, an acid that he was taking, had actually blocked his liver enzyme pathways that would deal with the neurotoxin from the pesticide that was used on his grass. And as a result, I think he received a $6 million payout from the makers of Tagamet, but because he did not have the horsepower in that particular pathway to deal with this, the neurotoxin remained longer in his body than he should have due to his uniqueness, and it affected him and harmed him in a permanent way. He now has permanent epilepsy and neurotoxic consequences. So guys, this is a huge issue, and again, we hear people say, well, each vaccine is safe and the total level isn't a problem, and I get that. And you know what? I'm not going to debate that. More than likely, they're right. However, the problem is we don't have easy systems to get rid of it, and secondly, it's an accumulated reality. So it's more of a reality of what we would call titration, where there is a difference between smoking cigarettes versus being stuck in a fire. So being stuck in a fire where you're inhaling smoke from the fire, that's an acute situation where you can't get away from it, and the smoking gun is very obvious. However, the reality of smoking, which is still inhaling smoke cigarette by cigarette, doesn't give you the same toxic burden and allows you to take fresh breaths of air after inhaling the toxic air from the drag on the cigarette, and as a result, you don't die right away. So we need to think this through, and we need to be conscious of what these various realities are and how they impact our overall health and our future vitality and longevity, as well as our kids. So endogenous toxins. These are toxins that are produced inside your body. Some of these toxins are waste products from normal metabolic activities. Carbon dioxide, urea, lactic acid are examples of endogenous toxins that your body churns out with each breath you take. But unless your health is severely compromised, your body is well equipped to eliminate these endogenous toxins from your system. Free radicals are formed during the normal breakdown of chemicals in the body, and an often overlooked source of endogenous toxins is an unhealthy gut. Over time, a diet that's rich in highly refined foods, poor eating habits, lack of chewing is a big one, and the emotional stress of life can lead to an unhealthy balance of microorganisms in your gut, a state that's called intestinal dysbiosis or leaky gut. Intestinal dysbiosis is accompanied by steady production of endogenous toxins by undesirable yeast, fungi, bacteria, and in rare cases even parasites. These toxins include aldehydes, alcohols, indols, phenols, and scatols, just to name a few. And these names sound very similar to the names of the exogenous toxins, or toxins from without, the ones that we've talked about already. While some of these endogenous toxins are eliminated gas, some make their way into your bloodstream by traveling through your intestinal walls. And once they make it into your bloodstream, they can access your cells and contribute to the total toxic burden within your body. Okay, so now we want to get into the area of the presentation where we talk about what are the organs of detoxification. Now that we have a clear understanding and a frightful view of really what we're up against as a human population and how we are not separate from what happens in other areas of the world and how it is pervasive throughout our entire ecosystem, affecting not just us but animals. I also recall one situation where an orca, a killer whale, had washed up on shore, and it was so polluted that they were considering incinerating it in a toxic incinerator rather than burying it in the ground because of its toxic load and what it would do to infect the soil and the vegetation and the water table around that burial site. I also know that PFOAs, which are off gases from Teflon-coated substances, have found their way into the bloods of polar bear. And realize that the higher you are up in the food chain, the more concentrated the chemicals are from those animals or plants of consumption that are further down the food chain. So when, a fish eats a plankton that's polluted in polluted water, and then a bigger fish eats that one, and a bigger fish eats that one, and then we eat the bigger fish, there's a concentration gradient that increases exponentially up the chain to that higher part of the chain on the food chain, which would be the orca, which would be the polar bear, which would be us. And so we overly intensify that concentration, and then it has this silent kind of effect on our body, where we really don't know what's happening because it's not an obvious reality. And unfortunately, the medical system requires something to target, something to shoot. And when the smoking gun isn't there, when it's the accumulated effect of all of these different dynamics of toxic sources coming to accumulate together and to stack and to exponentially impact the way in which our bodies are trying to manage this toxic body burden, it's very difficult to blame one source. And that's the problem with the medical system. They are ignorant, in my mind and in my view, and that's my opinion, of this dynamic of lifestyle impact, and lifestyle being how we're exposed to all of these different things. So while it might be true that the concentration of a product within something isn't in and of itself significant, but the accumulated intake, like smoking as an example, or even eating tuna from the tuna cans. We hear of saying, well, it's okay to have a certain number of tins of tuna a day, but if you have more than that number, or if you're pregnant, stay away from it. Well, hello, what a difference from that type of commercial or that type of information than the type that we hear about in the dog foods and the pet foods that are available that have, these types of minerals and these types of nutrients and essential fatty acids and all these things to give your dog a healthy coat and healthy gums and healthy teeth. Meanwhile, you wouldn't feed your dog Coke, you wouldn't feed your dog Twinkies, you wouldn't feed your dog all the foods that we so easily and readily throw down our mouth to try and satisfy our hunger pains at the time. So guys, these are the organs of detoxification: the lungs, the skin, the lymph, the blood, the liver, and the small and large intestine, or the colon. So we're going to talk about the lungs and skin first. So the lungs and skin are always working to remove toxins from your body. The biggest metabolic byproduct of the body is carbon dioxide, which can become toxic in high concentrations and cause death. You are expelling carbon dioxide with every exhalation. And if you've ever been around someone who drinks too much alcohol or is on a low-carb diet, you will also know that the lungs also get rid of alcohol breakdown products, also known as ketones. So the skin is the largest organ. It helps the body control body temperature. When we become hot, the body's sweat glands release waste products and cool the body. And detoxification occurs through a process of toxins and waste being released through the skin's pores to the surface during perspiration. Heavy metals, for example, can be excreted in a far-infrared sauna only, not in a regular sauna where heat encourages perspiration. It's a different type of dynamic. I do not recommend anything but far-infrared sauna. If you're going to take a sauna, the type of Swedish sauna or heat sauna where you put the heat on the rock is not good because it just heats up the core of the body, which then moves the toxins around inside you, but it doesn't help you get rid of them. And a great book written by a mentor of mine is called Detoxify or Die, and many of you may have heard me talk about that at different lengths, and it's a great book to get. It's by Sherry Rogers, Dr. Sherry Rogers, who is one of my mentors. And the book, again, the title is Detoxify or Die, and she goes into the rationale behind the various different dynamics around sauna usage. We actually had a sauna in the clinic at one point in time that people could actually use as a treatment opportunity. But the lymph and blood are also part of the detoxification system. Lymph is a watery, slightly yellow liquid found in the lymphatic vessels of one's body. These vessels act as a drainage system for the body. So just as blood circulates throughout the body, so does lymph. Lymph flows slowly, coaxed by movement of the body's muscles until it empties back into the blood vessels just above the heart. This is why when people are involved in sedentary activities such as sitting for prolonged periods of time, that the lymph actually becomes stagnant. And just like a stagnant pond, it then helps to promote toxicity. That's why when they're checking for cancers in various different areas, whether it's breast or any type of pelvic cancer, they're always checking the lymph around those areas. They're taking out the lymphs to biopsy them to see if there's any cells there, because that's one of the ways in which our bodies manage that. And when there isn't the proper flow and things back up, then things become toxic when our body's toxic. The actual lymph fluid is formed when liquid plasma and protein from the blood ooze out of our capillaries and then are picked up by the almost transparent lymph capillaries or vessels. However, it is not only excess fluid from the blood that is picked up, but also nutrients, hormones, waste products of the cell, bacteria, cancer cells, and cellular debris are also picked up. The blood vessels of your body represent a closed delivery system which functions to transport blood around the body, circulating substances such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, as well as the nutrients and waste products absorbed from the intestines. And as blood flows through the kidneys, the liver receives the blood from the intestines. Blood from the intestines contains nearly everything absorbed by the intestines, including nutrients, drugs, and toxins. The liver. I love talking about the liver. There's a lot of information that we could talk about here. And there are tests that can be done to evaluate your own body's ability to perform liver function. We are not talking about liver disease here. We are not talking about whether or not your liver enzymes are high. Again, that's a reactive, after-the-fact assessment that the medical doctor will order. We're talking about whether or not the liver has the ability to perform, and the genetic capacity of the liver is determined by your genes. And also genetic tests can be performed which will enlighten us as to how well your genetic limits are set by your genes in terms of how you detoxify products. I know my own genetics, and I will share and be vulnerable that I have a genetic reality that is a variation of normal. That is a situation where I have a difficult or a more difficult time than others at detoxifying cigarette smoke and car exhaust. And upon discovery of this reality many years ago, it became clear of the connection between my experiences as a young boy, as a scout, and a venture and around the campfire, where I would have difficulty in breathing around campfire smoke compared to others. I would have to be extremely clear and stand upwind to the fire, and also around the exhaust that was emitted from cars and trucks. So what became evident was that my body was telling me where my weaknesses were, and these weaknesses were in the management and the dynamics of management with that. So I just wanted to let you know about that. It's pretty interesting. But the liver is the body's oil filter. Liver detoxifies harmful substances by a complex series of chemical reactions. The role of these various enzyme activities in the liver is to convert fat-soluble toxins into water-soluble substances that can be excreted in the urine or the bile depending upon the particular characteristics of the product. Simply speaking, the body's natural liver detoxification process involves two steps. Phase 1 and Phase 2. A toxin initially enters in Phase 1 and is reduced to smaller fragments. This fragment is usually more toxic than the original. So one side effect of Phase 1 is the production of free radicals, which is no problem if your body has enough antioxidants available to neutralize them before they cause any damage. The smaller fragments from Phase 1 then progress to Phase 2, where they are bound to molecules such as glutathione, glycine, and sulfate. These are conjugates, and this process creates a non-toxic molecule that can be excreted in the bile, urine, or stool. In effect, Phase 1 either directly neutralizes a toxin or modifies it to form an activated intermediate, which is more toxic sometimes than the first one, which are then neutralized by one or more of several Phase 2 enzyme systems. So here's what can happen. You can have a situation where you might be very slow in the Phase 2 dynamics of your detoxification program or process in your liver that you don't even know about, but you may have a highly ramped Phase 1. So you're quickly removing the toxins from the environment, making a more toxic intermediate than the original, but your sluggish systems in Phase 2 aren't able to remove it. Here's the analogy. Phase 1 is where you bring your garbage to from under the sink to the street. That's phase 1. So phase 2 is when the garbage collection comes to pick up your garbage from the street and take it to the dump. So as you're producing products of toxicity within your environment, and you produce these toxins, all of a sudden now they end up on the street. Now let's say you are slow in phase 1. So let's say you allow your garbage to remain too long under your sink. Well, now it begins to stink under the sink. Well, what if there's a garbage strike where phase 2 components are slow and sluggish? Well, now the garbage will pile up at the street and it will stink. So the phase 1 and phase 2 components are controlled through various different required nutrients. You'll see in this picture step 1 and step 2, and then the aspects of conjugation, etc., need to have various different nutrients that you obtain from your food present to help you perform that. And for me personally, I would need greater levels of these nutrients because my systems were sluggish to certain components. So I would need to compensate for my genetic weakness by providing me a unique, personal, biochemical, individualized, greater lifestyle requirement of these precursors or nutrients to give me the same effect as someone that didn't have the defect that I have. Does that make sense? All right. So I talked earlier about the fact that the liver is the body's oil filter. So if the liver is the body's oil filter, we change our filter in our car every 5,000 kilometers or miles. That's often as twice a year or more, but it's very important that we do that. But we don't think about we don't think twice about neglecting your body filter, the liver, for an entire lifetime. Unlike a car filter, your liver is designed to detoxify and cleanse itself, but the liver can easily be overwhelmed and kept from performing its own self-detoxifying procedures when you have the type of dynamic that I have, or when your body is extremely challenged as it relates to its toxic total body burden. So now we're going to talk about see here this aspect of liver and alcohol, where excess liver and alcohol here causes a toxic product, acetaldehyde, that can cause liver damage that's linked to alcoholism and brain damage. But it causes the production of acetate. It's this acetaldehyde that is linked to the hangover symptoms. But as this increases in the blood, then what happens is we need to produce the necessary enzymes to manage this. And we all know that some people are able to handle alcohol better than others. Some people can get drunk on having, let's say, 1 beer versus 4 or 5. And it's because we have different enzyme functions within our body that allow us to handle that particular reality. But if we're exposed to this for too long and over excessive dynamics, then our body can't keep up and cope. Remember that it's all about supply and demand. And we need to individualize or understand our own unique mosaic, our own unique reality, and then generate a lifestyle that supports our uniqueness but doesn't hinder or suppress the expression of health and optimal wellness for a lifetime because we've made choices that might have been okay for our neighbor or our brother or another family member but have been detrimental to us. So it behooves us to then try and find out who we are and then modify the lifestyle to dynamically support that with health and wellness, because disease, chronic illness and disease will always and ever be, and I've said this before, the natural and logical outcome of the body's exposure to a harmful and detrimental environment. Okay guys, the kidneys are sophisticated reprocessing machines. Each day a person's kidney processes about 200 quarts of blood to sift out about 2 quarts of waste products and extra water. The waste and extra water become urine. Moving along here, the colon's main purpose is to compact the chyme, which is liquefied food and bile fluid released from the liver and gallbladder. It absorbs excessive water from the chyme. You receive the B vitamins that are produced by healthy intestinal bacteria. If you are there, if you've had any antibiotic therapy at all in your life, you do not have healthy intestinal bacteria because it will have wiped it all out unless you've worked hard at reestablishing that floralization within the intestinal area. It does not happen naturally. It has to be impacted by a willful decision to replace what should be replaced. So any antibiotic therapy will do it to anybody, and most of us have. Therefore, most of us have poor intestinal function, and most of us are also eating meat that have low-grade levels of antibiotics within it, and therefore, as a result, we are consuming foods, whether it's not an oral dose or a pill form of an antibiotic. We are eating food, meats, beef, chicken, those types of foods that have been given antibiotics to the animal, and the low-grade levels have been proven to then affect us. That's why one of the magnificent 5 necessary monthly, daily realities in terms of taking supplements is the consumption of a probiotic on a daily basis to counteract that. But back to the colon, more compacted chyme and dead bacteria in the rectum and get out of the body. So that's what it does. So what's the good news, right? What's the good news in this whole dynamics? The good news is our bodies are wonderfully made and able to clear away toxicity if they don't have any interference. What's the bad news? Bad news is they were never meant to handle this level of toxic exposure today, and our systems have become overloaded and overwhelmed. So we're going to have a look at some of the symptoms of things that we talked about earlier from toxic overload in our bodies and see how a purification program can benefit you. A lot of people have difficulty losing weight, and we've assumed that perhaps this is because we're not getting the right program, or this program is not working, or that program is not working, and really that may not be the case. There is a saying about the body that the solution to pollution is dilution. And as your toxic burden goes up, the body must find more and more storage sites for these toxins that it cannot eliminate from the body from all of the different sources that we've talked about so far in this presentation. Thus, as a person becomes toxic, more and more fat or water weight is added to be used as a toxic dump site to protect the body from freely circulating toxins. Once created, the body is very reluctant to get rid of the toxic dumps unless we first get rid of the toxins through the process of detoxification. And when we detoxify, the nice side benefit is weight loss. Okay, so this is very important. It's very important because when the fat cell that has fat and toxicity within it loses the fat cell will reduce in size as it is metabolically challenged to reduce the fat within it, but it will also release the toxin, which then generally increases the overall toxic body burden within the body that causes shifts in the cellular water concentrations. It gets a bit technical, but the intracellular and the extracellular water shift as a result of more toxicity being released as body weight is released. And when body weight is lowered, we want that body weight lowering to be 100% related to fat weight release, not muscle mass loss in terms of what makes up our total mass on a scale. But when we lose the fat and we have the toxicity, if there's not a route of exit that's effective within the body that helps to draw it out, because the body has a difficult time in pushing it out, then what happens is the body will redeposit fat to then hide it again. And that's why we cycle through this inability to have fat loss. Now, we recommend different things, and part of the purification program that you will see in this next slide presentation, where we actually itemize the steps because it would be too much for just one presentation. We've separated into 2 audiovisual programs this month because of that. Then what will happen is we have these different tools that we have in the office. The ionic foot bath. We recommend far infrared saunas, and all of these tools are tools to help pull things out. And then we have a system called Biomarkers 2000, which we actually measure these different compartments within your body, and we can track and understand how your body is shifting to best help individualize your program and protocols, and to be able to see what's happening before we have a symptom issue, and that's amazing. So fatigue is another consequence of having toxicity within the body. Suppose you're always stressed, tired, and exhausted, that your get up and go has gone up and went. So why is that? Well, guys, toxins and the production of free radicals can damage the energy-producing powerhouses of the cells called the mitochondria. And so this leads to lowered cellular function and energy production, and thus fatigue. So the mitochondria is this powerhouse in the cell. It has its own DNA. It's actually DNA from your mother. So actually every human being on the earth is actually more of the mother than the father in terms of the way in which the DNA can be separated and attributed to the various different family lines. And the mitochondria, if it becomes damaged, no longer produces the energy, and damage to the mitochondria comes from the exposure to toxins. It's part of what was found to be the cause of Gulf War syndrome, from all the toxic exposure that the soldiers had when they were living in the desert, and the exposure to the oils that they used to keep the sand at a minimum and keep it down from the wind. They would put diesel fuel on the sand to keep it down, to keep the sand from blowing around. All right. Headaches. Let's suppose you have problems with recurring headaches. Chemical toxins and triggers can also be associated with this particular reality. Just like the alcohol toxins that create a hangover, other chemical toxins can trigger a number of symptoms, including the headaches. And what happens is, if your neck is already susceptible, and again, understand that this is not often just one dynamic for every person. Sometimes it can be a magic bullet in terms of dealing with things, but we need to be aware and realize and accept that the reality is that multiple issues can be causing problems, and we need to have a critical grid of assessment that at least has a model of thinking that allows us to think outside the box and to be aware of where these types of issues can be coming from. And that's functional medicine, and that's what I've been trained extensively in. And whether you've known it or not, and we have no time to get into it today, but that has been the critical model of thought that I have adopted over the last more than 15 years. Puffy eyes and swelling. Many people, when they describe being fatigued and run down, also complain that they have puffy eyes and face, or swollen fingers, or swollen legs. Remember the saying, the solution to pollution is dilution. Your body will store excess water to dilute toxic chemicals in your body. Purification often results in clear skin and less edematous swelling. Joint pain is very common. Arthritis is the #1 source of joint pain. Many common sources of joint pain are associated with toxicity. Leaky gut that I talked about earlier, or toxins from the colon is reabsorbed in the bloodstream, creating inflammation throughout the body, and bad diets is directly linked to that type of arthritic joint pain where there's deformation of the hands. In the old days, before the use of anti-inflammatories, the main method of managing arthritic pain in an arthritic pain sufferer was fasting. Purification will make improvements in joint pain as a result. Hormone imbalances and dysfunction can be caused by toxic overload. Often there are immediate improvements after purification in anxiety, PMS, and other hormonal imbalance symptoms. Remember that when a hormone is produced, when estrogen or testosterone is produced, if it needs to be excreted, it's excreted through the liver, and it is conjugated in a form just as we talked about in the toxins in the liver. So estrogen, estradiol is conjugated in the liver, and then it's excreted through the bowel. But if you have an unfriendly bowel, that will unconjugate the estrogen. That estrogen gets back into the body and now increases the total body burden of estrogen as the body begins to create more in its original methodology. Because it thought that, hey, I'm making it, I'm conjugating it, I'm eliminating it, I got to make more. But back behind the curtain, in the bowel somewhere, there's an unconjugation of that estrogen, which means that estrogen gets back into the body and now adds to the total burden, which then can increase the potential risk for such things as breast cancer, other estrogen-related cancers, prostate as well. So all of these things are significant PMS problems and other types of realities when there's this imbalance between the body's unique requirement for these hormones. I hope I'm making sense with this, because it's a fairly complicated consciousness, but you need to be aware that these are potential possibilities. Just taking a medication because your body, supposedly according to medicine, is no longer making a certain drug that you didn't make in the first place, doesn't make it right to give the drug. We need to first find out how the body's not working, because any drug prescription is only going to enforce an opinion upon the body in an environment that's not working anyway. So allergies and sinus congestion, these are toxic overload issues because they can produce it. When people purify, they often notice that their allergic symptoms are reduced or gone. Mental state and insomnia. Toxins can affect your mental state, causing things like the inability to concentrate, depression, mood changes, memory loss, sleep disturbances, and anxiety. And when you go through a detoxification or purification program, it will often lift your mental state and cause you to say something like, I've heard, why don't I live like this all the time? Well, it's important that purification is part of your daily, yearly ritual cycle. Blood lipids. For someone who is concerned about high cholesterol and triglyceride levels in their bloodstream as a result of chronic inflammation and a poor diet, a purification program can have profound effect on fat levels in the blood. Here's an example of this person, Megan G. Her blood lipid profiles, at the beginning, before, and later. There was a huge change in the overall heart risk associated with how the purification program had changed her internal blood chemistry. Guys, it's a purification process. So in purification, we're talking about helping the body work better and manage the environment better. And as it does, it will naturally express health and wellness. The body doesn't need help often, it just needs no interference. And interference is this issue of toxic body burden that I've made a case for, the reality that it is pandemic and everybody has it and nobody can hide. So everybody that is alive, that has a pulse, needs to be doing a purification program. So what is our 21-day purification program? Just 3 weeks of your life. Well, we want to make the most of it. So, we promote these other dynamics, lymphatic drainage, massage, saunas, deep breathing, Kangen water, Kangen water, Kangen water. That you can get it from the office. You can put it in your home. We have it in ours. But the Kangen water at 9.5, helping to change the toxicity by filtering the water. It has the ability to manipulate pH. It's an antioxidant as a liquid. We're made up of 70 to 75 or 80% of water, especially in the brain. This is important. Okay. What to expect in the program. We'll talk about this in the next slide presentation a little bit more as well. But frequency of urination may increase as the body is flushing, especially as you increase the water consumption. Increased bowel movements. Some people experience a throbbing sensation in the head, generalized aches. These are because primarily the body is trying to get rid of stuff and it is trying to put it through the exit passages that we've talked about earlier, the liver, the kidney, the skin, the lung. But you got to hang in there. Sometimes just taking more water or slowing down the process is important. Remember, everyone's unique and different. I told you about my unique genetics. And so everyone will respond differently to these realities, and it's important to communicate what's going on. So common purification issues, sometimes skin breakouts because the skin is a major source of elimination. Okay, constipation. We recommend mag citrate, sometimes prunes, Kangen water, Kangen water, Kangen water. Diarrhea is sometimes an issue. Bloating after meals, so you can take some proteolytic enzymes. Remember, too, guys, that your nervous system controls the organ systems of detoxification. Lungs, small and large intestine are coordinated through the lower area of the thoracic spine and into the lower back. And so any history of back pain can impact the way in which the nervous system allows for that control, because the spine will interfere with that. So that's something to consider too as well. And guys, there are two roads diverged in the wood, and took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference, by Robert Frost. So guys, as we're working through this, just understand that this is the road less traveled. Okay, this is the road that most people do not take, and we are here to help you and to support you. We have the last. There's a second presentation that will go through how the 21-day program works, how we manage the 21-day process. I wish you the best outcome, so please contact the office right away at 905-629-0688. If you have any problems, you can email me too as well at drdave@mosaiclifecare.com. That's Dr. Dave, Dr. Dave at mosaiclifecare.com, and you can email a question to me. Sometimes we have to go more slowly with some individuals, but the issue will be that as a result of this purification program, your body will work better. It will be able to be managed better. Again, if I put sugar in my gas tank, it's not going to work and run very well. So I've got to clear it out. I've got to get rid of the sludge, to allow the engine of my body to run and to work better and to have a better ability to generate power and to be enjoyed for a longer period of time. Guys, we're here to help. We want to save lives ahead of time, and as a result, we're just here to help support you whenever it is you want to be able to do. We're thankful that you've trusted us for this way, and we'll look forward to meeting again with you for Class 9, Module 9, which will come up next time, and we look forward to that. Don't forget to watch the video. Don't forget to download the protocols. Don't forget to watch the second presentation that goes through the actual mechanisms of this, and thank you for participating. Bless you, and love to all.